our Lord, we prevail. I wanted to just explain to people out there, just veterans, to implore you to talk to your children and grandchildren, nephews, nieces, etc., stepchildren, about the complexity about serving. The direction I've seen the VA go, it's great that they're cutting budgets and returning money to veterans. I still see us, regardless what's put on paper or in the media, I still see control being taken from us. I see it in my healthcare all the time. I'm given two options. That's it. And usually the provider has the control. And when we want all the information, we're ignored. When we say, okay, I understand that that's your recommendation. What did you base that on? And they refuse to give you evidence. They refuse to give you this test and that test. Could I see that? Well, that's not really the patient's part. Really? So we really don't have control of our health care. It's tongue-in-cheek. You have, control your health care, wink, wink. So I would just explain that to, people who are thinking of serving. I would find a different way to serve the country, honestly. I would discourage people from joining the military because the way I see us veterans being treated, it's not getting better. One party will come up with a way to treat us better, and then the other party will come up with a way to try to hamper it. That's the way I'm looking at it. And, within the VA, it's great that they're, can't believe I'm saying this, but I am from Michigan, born and spent a big portion of my life bleeding in. Born and bred, not born and bled. Well, regardless, same thing. But it's great that they're taking money away from the unions and giving it to veterans. But I haven't seen it. And I don't know of any veterans that I know that have seen significant change in their care. Still, the providers control everything. And if we complain or disagree or ask for a second opinion, we're ignored. Unless the provider agrees with us, we don't have control of our care. And when we want to see raw data from blood tests or other pathology exams or from imaging, it's harder than heck to get them. And some you can't. I've tried to get blood test raw data for years. You can't get it. And it's harder than heck to get the imaging if it's done at the VA. If they put it in there, it could be up to a month or two. If they put it in my healthy vet, sorry. So, as much as I love my country, as a parent, I'm telling, I only have one daughter in the States, and one has disappeared, but because I'm captive, I can't find her. I'm captive here in Michigan. But I discourage my children from serving, because what I've seen, if it's so easy for people to get malicious people into the VA, who target certain people, especially people, who, have studied around a little bit, different areas, and who may have, more than one or two areas of interest or even, say, expertise, and they, disagree, they're bullied, and everything about their care is weaponized. And they even have providers trying to actively disprove their disabilities, or to make them think of, oh, that's not that, yeah, that's wrong, no, it's this. I'm disgusted by the VA, and trying to weaponize my disability case so that it sits on somebody's desk. Oh yeah, he's got other medical issues that are still investigating. Oh, he's got. Oh, they diagnosed this too, but they just put it in his file. It's never been put in his file. They're trying to weaponize everything so that I never get really good care. When you're at 20 or 30%, it's not really significant, in the big scheme of things. Especially when you're thinking of, oh yeah, I can get this care and that care. Well, you're only at 20% actually. No, we only provide this. I mean, you don't even get extra um, financial assistance for your dependents until you hit 30%. And you only get VA down payment waivers when you hit, I believe it's 75% for a house. And I'm not sure about the rules for small business loans. I'm not sure. But, yeah, so we should be honest with our youth about serving their country. There's other ways to serve. Because, as much as I love my country, and don't doubt that I do not love my country, but my children are more important. If I see my children treated like crap, like I've been, even by fellow military and people in law enforcement and people who work at the VA, I won't let that happen to my children. I will not. And the fact of that people try so hard to sabotage you getting good care. And, and there's the compensation side too. Oh, make sure that, they don't get a good income from this, because we don't like him, or we're conservative and we think that disability should be for people stuck to a bed. Whatever their perspective. Or we don't care, we just don't like veterans. But we work at the VA. Maybe taking away union protections will help. Maybe not. You just don't know because of the direction that our country has went. When I worked at the call center, we had no unions. Oh no, wait, I take it back. Did we? No. Did we? No, we didn't have a union. And people did whatever they want. They came and went, got fired. If you were friends with some of the people who were powerful, then you never got fired, no matter what you did. But it was low pay, and like I said, anybody who called there, they have a 50-50 shot. It's pretty sad. Because the business plan for the company, the owners of the company, and some of the people, higher up in management, they had a great vision. And the problem was the people underneath them weren't carrying it through, honestly. Very few were. Like I said, around half. So, it explains why we lost so many contracts. The 2 years after I left, we lost a lot of contracts, almost everything. Because the kind of people that were getting power there, they were protecting their friends who were troublemakers. Some were they just got out of jail, and jail made them worse than they were before they went in. They didn't deserve jobs like that. People that are going to that job once in a while because, believe it or not, they only work part-time because they stripped part-time. Then have some people, that were caught between parent alienation from their custodial spouse, and the child support referee being pulled back and forth, bullied around, put in jail a few times, then bullied some more. And all the while, who's losing? The kids. So, these people, they're like, they can barely concentrate at work. They can, really barely give the potential that they had. I knew people like that. And it's one thing that's really, really nasty and unfriendly is the child support apparatus in Saginaw County. I have heard a lot of stuff. And they parallel the nastiness and the controversy and the lack of empathy, especially for fathers who are trying to pay child support, and they treat them equally as bad as the ones that don't care. And that is Oakland County. So, and then you got Wayne County, which is a short, very close third. But anyway, that being said, just make sure your children or whatever youth that you're talking to about serving, that they understand. Even the GI Bill now, there's another lawsuit again. They just had one 2 years ago. There's a new one about the VA shorting people, including the Rudisill guy, directly shorting him. And he's the one that the Supreme Court said, hey, you can't deny him his 4th year of GI Bill. That's what they did to me. Denied me. And I did what? I did 2 appeals, or 2 Rudisill reviews. 2. And they just dismissed me. 4 calls on it, 2 reviews. 2 of those calls I accomplished absolutely nothing. Still nothing. And I asked them also to look, because their claim of 3 years and 17 days, that's not totally accurate. Not totally accurate. But they refused to go in the back, because this is before computerization of a lot of that stuff. I should say digitization of a lot of that stuff. Back in the day, we did most of the stuff on phone through Wave. And, you could do limited stuff online. Very, very limited. But now everything's online. Everything. It's all digitized. But anyway, so they're back in court again. Another Rudisill review, because the VA refused to implement, Mr. Rudisill, Sergeant Rudisill, to implement his last year of GI Bill, because according to U.S. Code, we can have 4 years of it. And I think it should be a lot more than that, There's other countries, Europe, Asia, Middle East. You serve, you have a kind of GI Bill as long as you want to go to school. It's not limited. But, when you think about it, anybody who is an officer, they can get an education up the wazoo. Just endless stuff that they can apply for. Enlisted, maybe if you're a senior NCO, maybe. Why? Why is the discrepancy there? Shouldn't it be everybody can be in education? Because the best soldier is the soldier statesman. History has proven that. But I guess that's why I don't work for a VBA. But if somebody can weaponize the VBA so easily against me, for my claim, and I'm sure others similar, probably not as bad as what is being done to me, stuff just sitting on people's desk, people ignoring stuff. Every time I submit evidence, there's a new DBQ, which I looked it up. That is not necessary. They're doing that so they can countermand what my evidence says. I know they are. because so far, of all the contractors that have touched my file to review stuff, and every reviewer, we already have mistakes that add up to 30%. When I look at the VA's rules and procedure and I look at my evidence, yeah, they've screwed up 30%. So actually, a couple more things I have to review, it could be as much as 50% they've screwed up. But I just have to look at the criteria for a couple of my other issues that were in service. They missed those. It was in service. But I have to look up the criteria for those issues. And then we can't forget being denied the last year of my GI Bill. But I'm not alone there. That's why the new court case is just started. Because the VA refused to obey what the Supreme Court said. They said this soldier deserves another year because his case, his split service, it all makes sense. Exactly. I have split service too. That's how I know I qualify. My situation is exactly like Rudisill. Exactly. But I was denied twice. Not only was I denied, but I was denied in such a rude and unprofessional way. Like my service didn't matter at all. They didn't even sign the documents. It said regional processor. Nobody even signed it. But, yeah, and then one of them said, as we told you before, from this letter, I'll restate it again. Very unprofessional kind of word choices there. Very unprofessional. Almost insulting. Anyway, so I would think twice about serving again. And, as I told my daughter today, my youngest, I would think twice, What's happened to me, I'm sure it'll be worse for your generation. So, think of the youth first, not our patriotism or our desire to carry on our legacy of service. Think about their quality of life and their standard of living and all the abuse and all the trouble and all the loss and all the pain and all the turmoil that they'll experience, just like we have.